The Vancouver Principles are a set of political commitments focused on child protection in peacekeeping. Rwanda is referred to as a good example to the world in effective implementation of the Vancouver Principles as stated by Honorable Harjit Sajjan, Canada's Minister of International Development. The minister credited Rwanda's leadership for the progress the country has registered in the fight against recruitment and re-recruitment of children into armed forces.
It's the actual individual countries and governments that need to take this on. So what's important is also a government that's willing and wanting to do this. In Rwanda, you have this, and many other countries. And so we're hoping that other countries will take Rwanda's example, where we can put money in. But also, as you know personally, probably, that the Rwandan government also supports, from what I have heard, families to making sure the reintegration happens and monitor them all the way through. So that is so important because, honestly, it's a tragedy if a child is re-recruited back into an armed group. So we can't let that happen. So we're going to be putting some focus. This is why the Dallaire Institute is also extremely important in this. With the research that they will do, we'll take that research and making sure that our programming money is also put in the right place. One very important point that the Inspector General made, the Deputy Inspector General made was, when you have women in power making decisions, children feel safer. So that's something I want to also message out because you see it, you've done it. And so we need to highlight that more as well.
According to Dr. Shelley Whitman, the Executive Director of Dallaire Institute, Rwanda was the first country to ratify the Vancouver Principles, which comprise of 17 principles focusing on preventing the recruitment and use of child soldiers by armed forces and groups. She noted that the partnership with Rwanda is a powerful starting point given the nation's credibility to engage other countries.
Our partnership with Rwanda allows us to also talk to other nations about the need to have this training. So when we can say that one of the top peacekeeping contributors in the world, in a country that has been growing economically in prominence, is taking this training, and I say to a country like Mozambique, for example, and their Ministry of Defense, well, you know, Rwanda undertakes our training. When we are able to do that, it is something that's very powerful to be able to say to those nations that if Rwanda, as professional as they are, also realizes that this is something they need assistance on and that we can work with them on to build the capacity, it means it opens up other gateways for partnerships with those countries. And we know that there are boys and girls who get recruited and used as child soldiers. Many people don't see the girl child and the roles that they are undertaking because they have traditionally been also more in support function roles. But one of the 6th grade violations against children is sexual violence against children. We have been undertaking work too where we make it clear to people that we're not just talking about sexual violence though against girls. While it's used against girls, it's also used against boys in conflict zones. And in fact, boys who are recruited and used are also often forced to commit sexual violence. It may even be their first sexual encounter, sometimes, as horrific as that sounds, to commit this sexual violence as part of their indoctrination process. So understanding the gender dynamics from the recruitment process and from the different roles and the different impacts that it may have, because boys and girls also have different ways of dealing with trauma and various other matters that can happen from a health perspective too. To also then understanding the differences of men and women who are in uniform and who interact with the children.
Rwanda's army spokesperson, Colonel Ronald Rivanga, hailed the outstanding cooperation between the Dallaire Institute and the Rwanda Defense Forces on the prevention of the recruitment and use of children as soldiers, which span over 10 years, as expounded on by Colonel Ronald Rivanga.
The Memorandum of Understanding between the Dallaire Institute and the Ministry of Defense of the Republic of Rwanda as global leaders in advancing efforts to prevent the use of children in violence by accelerating the effective implementation of the Vancouver Principles, a complementary instrument to the Kigali Principles on Protection of Civilians. The key mission of the Ministry of Defense and the Rwanda Defense Force in our peacekeeping operations is to protect civilians wherever we operate. The Delhi Institute Center of Excellency brings a unique approach and expertise to combating the issue of the use of children in conflict situations on the continent and beyond.
Delhi Institute and the Government of Canada will partner to continue to promote the Vancouver principles across the African continent, as well as mitigate the factors that coerce and motivate children to engage in armed violence.